Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last several years, I've been doing videos on all kinds of things. Les filles du roi, the king's daughters, genealogical research, travel videos, and last, I started a concurrent series this past January on les filles mariées, the marriageable girls. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Before we get started, let me show you ways you can support the channel. Subscribe, like, and notify all helps my logarithms. In order to make the channel grow even more, we also have a Patreon service that you can subscribe to. $1 to $25 a month, I think it is. And then we also have coffee, which you can also donate to one time or do a monthly. And then on my website, I also have a PayPal donation as well. All of that helps me do the research and have the time and all of that good stuff. So thank you to all of you who have participated thus far. Really appreciate every one of you. So let's get started and find out more about les filles mariées. Les filles mariées was a blanket term that was applied to all the ladies who came between 1634 to 1662. Why are those dates important? Because 1634 is really when Quebec kind of began again after the conquest by the British in 1629, and by 1634 they were reestablishing themselves. And then 1662 is important because that was the last year that there wasn't there was marriageable girls, because after that it was Les Filles du Roi. The program began in earnest. And so there was about 262 ladies who came, averaging about 10 a year. That they quickly figured out that wasn't enough to populate a country. They needed more women, more children, all the above. So with that being said, that's how come Les Filles du Roi program came, because they realized, not the error of their way, but they realized that they needed to do something different. But les filles mariées are still extraordinarily important because they are truly the founding grandmothers of Quebec. Filles du Roi, founding mothers. Filles mariées, absolutely founding grandmothers, because they were there at the beginning. So you're going to find when you have a fille mariée, you're right there at the beginning of whatever was happening in Quebec at that time. You weren't late to the show. You were right in it. So let's get to know our Filles mariées episode number 40. So les Filles mariées episode 40, Genevieve Gamache de Lamarre. And she is a viewer request. I do not have her in my files, so it was a delight to get to know Genevieve. Let's get started. So Genevieve was born in 1637 in Beaupre, France. Her parents were Nicolas Gamache de Lamarre and Jacqueline Cadeau. You can see on the map that she is part of the Île-de-France, so she really is close to Paris, the suburbs. And Yvelines Département is the département or county of Île-de-France that she was. It's a small community of about 1,900 people. The church, as you can see, has existed since the 15th century, and we also have an aerial view of the very small community that is Beaupre. So this is really a, kind of an extremely small suburb of Paris. Genevieve would come to New France in 1652. She arrived with her brother Nicolas. Nicolas would go on to marry Elisabeth Ursel Cloutier, whose grandparents were Zachary Cloutier and Noël Morin, true pioneers and movers and shakers. Nicolas, the heir to his parents' inheritance, was able to hire his brother-in-law for 2 years and provide not only money but also food and lodging, helping the young couple. Now remember that Nicolas was all of 16 years of age, but that's how it worked in there. So let's get to know who became his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law and her husband was Julien Forte de Bellefontaine. He was born in 1621 in a commune called Notre-Dame-de-Vert in France. His parents were Julien Forte and Marie Lavier. And that is part of the Pays de la Loire region. And the département is the Sarthe département. After the Revolution, Notre-Dame-de-Vert became Saint-Cosme en Verret. So you need to know that that's how it evolved. The church where he most probably would have been baptized, Église Notre-Dame, dated from the 12th century and was destroyed after the French Revolution. So many things in France really, really changed. Now remember, France had existed for a long time, so there was a lot of things that were in place. When we had our revolution in America, it hadn't been that long, so but there were still changes due to the revolution, but it wasn't as drastic as the French Revolution. They were married November 11, 1652, at Saint-Joachim de Montmorency at Cap Tourmente. They were married at the first chapel here, and that was built in 1628. This would have been the chapel they would have been married in. A second chapel in 1667 survived until 1759 when the church burned it. But I was lucky enough to find this picture on your left. This is where the church was, where they would have been married. So that's just amazing. Settle in the town of Beaupre. The origins of this town, which today has about 3,500, began from soldiers from Breton that arrived here and were startled by the beauty of the place and apparently said, "Oh, le Beaupre," which actually means beautiful meadow. Looking at the picture on the right, you can absolutely see what they meant. And just to give you a context, at the 1666 census, Quebec City and Beaupre had essentially the same population, although of course Beaupre has remained a small village. It was not until about 1962 that the parish gained town status and became Ville de Beaupre. So it is one of the oldest, but it's actually just got its town status, if you will. And it is home to the fabulous ski resort called Mont Sainte-Anne, which is truly one of the best. Now, in the 1666 census, we have Julien, who was a boucher, a butcher. Genevieve, so there's a 20-year gap there. We have Barbe, all their children, Barbe, Charles, Eustache, we have Jacques, we have Genevieve, we have Joseph, we have Marie. Then we have a domestic engagé, Nicolas Palmé. Okay, so that's kind of neat. In the 1667 census, we have Julien. Interestingly, a year has gone by, they have not aged, but their children have. Barbe, Charles, Eustache, Jacques, Geneviève, Joseph, Marie, Julien. He was just born. And they have two domestics, Léonard, 20 ans, and François Gérivé, 30 years old. They have 15 beasts or cows, and they have 20 arpents, about 18 acres of land. They would go on to have 12 children. Barbe would marry Pierre Gagne and have 10 children, 8 of whom would make it. She then married Pierre Lessard and had 6 more children, 2 of whom would make it. Charles would marry Saint Cloutier and have 10 children, 9 of which would make it to adulthood. Eustache would marry Louise Cloutier and have 11 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Jacques would marry Catherine Biville and have 11 children, 9 of whom would make it. Geneviève married Noël Gagnon and had 10 children, 5 of whom would make it. Joseph would marry Anne Gagnon and have 7 children, 6 of whom would make it. Marianne would marry Jean Picard and have 2 children, both of whom would make it. Julien would die at the age of 20. Pierre would go on to marry Gertrude Hudon and have 14 children, 13 of whom would make it. We have Louis, who passed away at the age of 16. We have Jean, who we have no more information of. Marguerite would marry Pierre Françoise Fromage and have 2 children, neither of whom made it to adulthood before her early death at 25. Then we have the 1681 census. We have Julien Forte, 50 years old, Genevieve Gamache, 44, their children. Barbe is already gone from the household. We have Charles, Eustache, Jacques, Geneviève. We have Joseph, Marie. We have Julien, who's still alive, Pierre, Louis, Jean, and Marguerite, Wow, that's amazing. They have 2 guns, they have 16 goats, and 20 arpents valeurs, about 18 acres of. So Julien would leave first. He was 71 years old, and he would die August 1st, 1692, in at the hospital on the 10th of August. And that's a picture of the Hôtel Dieu de Québec at that time. And this is a remarkable piece of information. Registre journalier des malades de Hôtel Dieu de Québec, which means the daily journal of the sick at the Hospital of Quebec, Hôtel Dieu. And I have put the link so you can also access it as well. Just an amazing thing. He and Genevieve would have been married exactly 40 years that year had he made it to November. Just amazing. Genevieve would die November 5th, 1709 at Lisley with her son Charles because she was living with him. She was 72 years old, and she and Julien left an astonishing 364 descendants. Tell me if you are one of them, please. That's an amazing amount. In 2021, the Association of Fortes of Amerique, Quebec, and Canada obviously went to France and commemorated this. It was the 400th anniversary of the baptismal of their ancestor, Julien Forte. And there's also another, kind of monument of the families that came from this area. And you can clearly see that he was not alone. There were lots of people that came. Bisson, Bouillard, Bouchard, Dody, Fortin, Garnier, Gagne, Le Rêve, Mavry, Pouliot, Rocheron, Rouillard, and Robillard. And Je me souviens. So that is kind of a really neat way of saying, wow, he really was among the first. This is the Association of Fortins of America. This is if I can read it, the monument in honor of Julien Forte, located at the Chemin du Cap Tournant. So it's there if you want to explore that. And I have also listed the website for you to be able to access it. Julien Forte is featured in the very first volume of Nos Ancêtres, our French-Canadian ancestors. Have a look at that. I have put the Facebook page for you to have a and be able to read the volume. It's about 6 pages long, so have a look at that. Here are the resources that I love to use. Want to talk a little bit about a free resource, which is Genealogical Québec et d'Amérique française. This is Nos Origines, and I put it in the notes. Nos Origines is a free site. It's kind of like a wiki tree for Quebec, and so people have contributed and continue to expand it. So have a look at that. Put in the names. You'll soon see the amount of information that's there. It is quite startling. So end episode 40 was really fascinating. The Forte family, and to know that Genevieve Gamache is the matriarch of the Forte family. It's a very, very common name. Obviously, there's a lot of Fortes out there, and I would be thrilled to hear who is related to this incredible family. And it was very nice to be able to really see her make her mark, and they both lived relatively, long lives, and were able to be together, and neither of them, had other marriages, and it was kind of like a little love story. So I really dug this couple. I thought they were really kind of a close knit. And as I read through the information, certainly if you are a descendant of Genevieve and Julien, I think you can be very, very proud. And we want to thank Genevieve for making that perilous journey and for sacrificing so much. And we bless your memory, and we are ever so grateful you came to our shores. And I am grateful for all my patrons, supporters, and viewers, subscribers. Thank you all so very, very much. You make what I do so much more enjoyable. And thank you for your notes and your comments and suggestions. And for those of you who participate, thank you for your donations. I really appreciate that. But more than anything, I appreciate your enjoying what I'm doing. So thank you ever so much, and we will see you on episode 41. Until then, au revoir.